craze and has become a global marketing phenomenon. Pokemon has captured the imagination of children around the world and billions of dollars from their parents' wallets.
After the highly successful release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, Game Freak, the developers behind the Pokemon craze, set out to craft a sequel that went above and beyond what the originals had entailed. They wanted to make the games bigger, with more creatures to capture, battle, and trade. But development issues had caused the titles to enter a development hell. Gold and Silver would spend 3.5 long years in development before finally releasing in late 1999. And the world waited with bated breath to see if Pokemon was more than a fad. This is the story of Pokemon Gold and Silver. And in this part, we'll be taking a look at the release of Pokemon Gold and Silver, the impact it had on the world, and the legacy it has left to this day. Pokemon had become a global phenomenon by 1999. A popular TV series, a high-grossing theatrical film, multiple manga adaptations, a trading card game, merchandise as far as the eye could see, and of course, the games. Nintendo was already considering Pokemon one of its most important franchises at this point. Pokemon was receiving multiple spin-off titles on the Game Boy and Nintendo 64, and popular characters from the series like Pikachu and Jigglypuff were appearing in Nintendo titles like Super Smash Bros. For Gold and Silver, Nintendo set their sights high by ordering 30 million copies of the game for the Japanese launch, and estimating that the titles would sell over 8 million units in Japan alone. Unfortunately, an earthquake in Taiwan would push back the production schedule, and Nintendo would only have 1.5 million cartridges available in Japan for the release. Even with a shortage of copies available, Gold and Silver were a huge success in Japan. Both titles released on November 21st, 1999, over 3.5 years since the release of Red and Green. Together, the two games would sell more than 6.5 million copies in Japan within the first 6 months, barely outselling Red and Green within the region. And what a sequel it was! Gold and Silver were massive improvements over the original titles. The upgrade to the Game Boy Color paid off, as these titles popped even on the tiny Game Boy screen. The 100 new Pokemon all felt original and welcoming alongside the original 151. New features like the day and night system added a sense of believability to the world of Pokemon. The story would serve as the groundwork for the rest of the series, with a massive focus on the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh and Lugia. Gold and Silver introduced 2 new Pokemon types, Dark and Steel, to help balance out the typing advantages and disadvantages that the first game suffered from. The music. Oh, the music. You've been listening to it throughout this series, and I find Gold and Silver to have one of my favorite soundtracks in the Pokemon series. All of this managed to be created on decade-old Game Boy hardware. The titles even featured a condensed version of the Kanto region that served as the basis of the first games, thanks to the compression tools that Satoru Iwata had created. To say the least, Pokemon Gold and Silver were masterpieces. The rest of the world wouldn't have to wait very long for Gold and Silver. North America would receive the titles on October 15, 2000, and Europe would receive a release in April of 2001. Critical reception was high in North America for the sequel, with Gold and Silver receiving numerous high scores, including the at the time rare 10 out of 10 from IGN. Sales were great as well. Gold and Silver smashed the fastest selling games record for its first week, when it sold 1.4 million copies. The previous record holder was Pokemon Yellow, which managed to sell 600,000 units, less than half of Gold and Silver's total. In all, Pokemon Gold and Silver would sell an astounding 23 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling games of all time. The success of Gold and Silver would cause a new wave of Pokemon media and merchandise to flood the market. New spin-off games, most for the Nintendo 64, came out after Gold and Silver, including the well-received Pokemon Stadium 2 and the microphone-based title Hey You Pikachu. New seasons of the anime, new movies, new cards in the Pokemon trading card game, and millions of new toys were released based on Gold and Silver. Game Freak wasn't done with the games just yet. In December of 2000, Pokemon Crystal was released exclusively on the Game Boy Color. This new enhanced port would feature the option to play as a female protagonist for the first time in the series, animations for the various Pokemon, a battle tower, and a brand new story focused around the legendary Pokemon Suicune. In Japan, the title would come with the mobile adapter GB, a device that allowed players to connect their Game Boy to their mobile phone to interact with other players. This device was the only way players could obtain the mythical Pokemon Celebi for years to come. Crystal version would release in North America in July of 2001, only a month after the release of the Game Boy Advance. This wouldn't stop Nintendo of America from promoting the game. They would even release a special Game Boy Advance bundle with Pokemon Crystal. Critical reception in the States was still positive, but many noted that the new features weren't enough to some who had already enjoyed Gold and Silver. Crystal wouldn't sell as well either, only seeing a modest 6 million units sold worldwide. For some, this would be the last Pokemon game they played, as the new titles would release on the Game Boy Advance and begin to cut ties to the past games. It would be the beginning of the end of Pokemania, as sales for the series began to decline. Pokemon has remained popular since the release of these titles, but only on occasion has it reached the mainstream success it saw during this time period. After the release of Gold and Silver, Satoshi Tajiri handed off directorial duties of the Pokemon series to Genichi Masuda. Masuda joined Game Freak as a composer in 1989. He had also taken on the role of a programmer once his compositions were complete. Masuda would serve as the new face for the Pokemon series going forward. He has directed every mainline Pokemon title since the release of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire in 2002. Tajiri, and much of the old guard at Game Freak, have taken more executive positions in the company since, letting a new generation of developers grow and cultivate the ideas that these legendary developers planted many years ago. The impact of Gold and Silver should not be understated. While the mainline Pokemon games are often regarded as great titles, none receive quite the same love as Gold and Silver. The games are frequently cited as some of the best Game Boy games ever released, and to some, they're some of the greatest video games ever made. Many of the features from Gold and Silver would be carried on to future Pokemon titles, helping set precedents for the series. For me, Gold and Silver represent my introduction to the Pokemon games. While I was introduced to Pokemon through the anime, my first time with the games would be with a copy of Pokemon Silver. I recall visiting a neighbor's house sometime in 2003 and playing a copy of Pokemon Silver on a Game Boy Advance. I loved being able to use the Pokemon I had seen in the anime and on trading cards in battles. I wasn't very good at the game due to my lack of experience with the series and games in general. At one point, I recall one of my Pokemon becoming poisoned, and I freaked out when the screen started to flicker every few steps. I thought I had corrupted the game or maybe even broken the system. Eventually, I whited out somewhere between the second and third town in the game. But I was hooked. I would receive my own Game Boy Advance a few months later. I would spend most of my time with Pokemon Ruby, but I never forgot my origins. Sometime in the summer of 2004, a friend of mine would give me a copy of Pokemon Crystal, so I could explore the Johto region in full. Unfortunately, I no longer have that specific copy of the game, but I'll never forget those memories that I made. Gold and Silver would receive updated remakes in Japan in 2009 on the Nintendo DS, under the titles Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver. The games featured updated graphics and features that had been present in Pokemon games released over the past decade. The new titles would bring their own new features alongside these returning features as well. A new route and Safari Zone were added to the game. An updated Pokédex allowed some new Pokemon to be captured before beating the champion, and for the first time since Yellow, any Pokemon could follow the trainer throughout the overworld. The remakes would come with an additional device known as the Pokewalker, a pedometer that connected to the Nintendo DS system. You could transfer your Pokemon to this meter and walk around with them, gaining experience, items, and capturing new Pokemon. The games would release throughout the rest of the world in 2010, and they were massive hits. Critical reception was incredibly high, and the title sold a combined 10 million units, landing them on the best-selling Nintendo DS games list. I love Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and consider them some of the best Pokemon games in the series. Unlike the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire that would come a few years later, Heart Gold and Soul Silver feel like returning to Johto in true form. And they came at the perfect time. For the kids who played Gold and Silver when they were released, many of them were in high school and college when Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out. While I wasn't super into Pokemon around the time Heart Gold and Soul Silver released, I did pick up the titles and played through them multiple times over the years. They're excellent remakes by adding just enough new content to keep older players interested, while also retaining what made the originals so great. In September of 2017, Pokemon Gold and Silver would be re-released on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console for all regions. Pokemon Crystal would come shortly after in January of 2018. The Virtual Console re-releases would update the original slightly by adding online play and Pokebank compatibility. For the first time ever, Pokemon caught in Pokemon Gold and Silver could be transferred to newer titles on the Nintendo 3DS systems. The re-releases would even see a physical box copy released with downloadable codes inside of them, signifying the importance of these re-releases. Pokemon Gold and Silver had a lot to live up to. Despite the sky-high expectations, the games were a success and made Pokemon into the franchise it is today. It's hard to say where or what the series would look like if Game Freak had rushed out a sequel or scaled back their original vision. Since then, the series has grown to have more than 800 Pokemon across a total of 7 generations and over 30 mainline titles. Pokemon Gold and Silver hold a special place in my heart as well. While I never got to experience the titles during their heyday, I still call Johto home, alongside the Hoenn region. The games are still being discussed to this day, thanks to the unearthed content found from the game's various builds and betas. We all owe a great debt to Game Freak, who went the extra mile when crafting Gold and Silver. I've seen countless stories from gamers when they discuss their first impressions of Gold and Silver, whether it be encountering their first new Pokemon, fighting a legendary Pokemon, discovering Kanto was in the game, or even fighting the game's ultimate boss, Red. Sure, Gold and Silver have some problems, they aren't perfect games, but they changed Pokemon for the better. The story of Gold and Silver is that of the legacy it left behind, not just affecting me, but many, many gamers. Thanks for watching this series. If you would like to know more, please follow the link in the description for a list of sources and a short note about the making of this series. I would like to thank the various gaming outlets who helped create this series, including IGN, Game Informer, Nintendo, Bulbapedia, and the Cutting Room Floor. Without these sites and companies, I would not have the material to research to make this video. If you would like to support this series, you can do so by sharing this video. Leave a comment on what you would like to know the story of, and be sure to subscribe so you can catch the next video when it comes out. And once again, thank you for watching.